The typing of the dead.
Hey guys, Metal Jesus here, and today I am back with some gameplay footage and, kind of a quick review of Typing of the Dead on the Sega Dreamcast. I was playing this game because I was doing a big collection video showcasing all 111 Dreamcast games in my game collection. And when I do those videos, I try to capture as much of the gameplay footage myself. And honestly, it's just a great excuse for me to connect the Dreamcast keyboard to the console and just have an excuse to play this awesome game again. It's silly, it's dumb, but it's also one of my favorites. Now, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the House of the Dead series. It originally, it was created to be a light gun shooter game, and then as a surprise or some kind of whim or something like that, they decided to make it a typing game. Now, I didn't know that this was actually released originally in arcades. That, to me, is a wild concept, that you would walk up to an arcade machine and there would be, a keyboard there that you would play this. That just is such a odd idea. I mean, it's awesome, don't get me wrong, but when I think of a keyboard, I'm thinking a computer, right? But yes, this game actually started off in arcades and then got originally ported to the Dreamcast, which you see here, and then it also got ported obviously to the PC, and then I guess it got ported in Japan only to the PlayStation 2. I had no idea. When I think of the PS2, I don't think of a keyboard. And so I guess when you bought this game, it would come with a keyboard for your PlayStation 2. Again, that's really cool. Now, I think my love of this type of game stems back from the fact that very early on, when I was probably in, maybe junior high, but certainly in high school, I was one of the fastest typers in my school. Now, I didn't go to a very big school, so that's not exactly like a big brag or anything like that. But, back in the early to mid 80s, if you knew how to type really fast, that was kind of an unusual thing because most people didn't have home computers. If they did, most people weren't very fast at typing, but I certainly was. Now, at the time, to be fair, actually, I was a hunt and pecker, is what I call that, although I think it's kind of a silly kind of nickname. But basically typing with just two fingers, just typing with your two index fingers. But I'll tell you what, I was super fast. I don't remember how fast I typed at the time, but I would destroy anybody who tried to compete with me in school or my friends at home. And that's because I had a Commodore 64 and I was on it all day long. I mean, when I wasn't in school, I was on my Commodore typing out programs, things like that. Now, what's funny is that I went to try to get a job. I'm trying to remember how old I was, probably 18 or 19. I forget now when it was, but basically I was trying to get a job, and I was trying to get a computer job of some kind. And back then, a lot of it was data entry. A lot of it, because there just wasn't a way to sort of scan and input stuff. So a lot of companies were taking printed material. Think like doctor's offices and accounting people. They just had all these filing bins full of printed material that they needed data entered into a computer. And that's primarily what they were hiring for. And so I remember going to a job interview here in Seattle. I can't remember the company. It wasn't a major one, but anyways, I was going to get a data entry job because I could type so fast. And I went in there and I did type fairly fast, but the lady, and I was all proud of myself, and the lady was like, "You type pretty fast, but let me show you how real typists do it." And so she sat down at the keyboard and she typed with all of her fingers and destroyed me. And I was like, oh my God, again, this probably sounds so weird in, 2021, but, back late 80s, early 90s, whenever I had this job interview, it was like amazing to see. It was like watching a ninja typist work. And I realized, and she told me, she's like, you need to learn how to type with all of your fingers. Otherwise, you'll never get this kind of job. And she was right. And so I went home and I got one of these early type of games. I forget what it was. It might have been Sierra's Kids Typing. And I forced myself to relearn how to type using all of my fingers. And in doing so, it probably wasn't Kids Typing because that was probably a mid-90s game. But, there were games out there where kind of like this, although not nearly as cool, where you would basically learn how to type in a really fun kind of way. And, eventually I was able to type faster. Although, what's interesting about that, after all that, is to say that when I go and I play Typing of the Dead here on the Dreamcast, that I do sometimes struggle a bit. I don't type as much as I used to. I don't really type out that much anymore. And also too, I'm not really great about doing punctuation. Like you'll see here where it'll pop up, like an exclamation point or an asterisk or a plus sign or something like that, or a comma. And that'll be the thing that'll kind of trip me up, or numbers too, right? Because you have to kind of, you have to basically shift to get those, or function or whatever. So anything involving that will always kind of slow me down a bit. But the brilliance of Typing of the Dead is that it is a survival horror game, light gun game, but you have to type as fast as you can and as accurate as you can in order to make it through these levels. And so again, it's kind of funny because I look at them like, God, I could do so much better. Because I don't really play this game a lot either. It's usually whenever I'm doing videos like this where I get excited, connect the keyboard, and I'm off and running. But I always definitely look forward to it. It also cracks me up too. You'll see that the characters here, it's so silly because they're walking around with Dreamcasts strapped to their back, and then they have a keyboard in front of them. I love how this game incorporates the keyboard into the graphics. That's a detail they didn't necessarily need to do, but it makes me laugh every single time. The other thing about this game, if you haven't played it, is that it just has some of the worst, yet most hilarious voice acting of any game. I mean, it's definitely up there in probably the top 10 of all time. It's just so flat and so bad. And again, that's one of the things that really kind of endears me to this game, is just playing through it and just hearing all of that really bad, cheesy voice acting. It's so awesome, it's good, Now, I was really surprised to learn, actually, that they did another typing version of the House of the Dead. So my all-time favorite House of the Dead game is House of the Dead Overkill. That's the one that originally came out on the Wii, and then they remade it for the PS3, 4, I forget which one it was. But basically, that's the one where it's kind of like a Quentin Tarantino. They went full grindhouse on that game, and it's awesome. I mean, it's such a good game. I had no idea that they did a typing version of House of the Dead Overkill. I don't think it came out on consoles. I could be wrong about that. It certainly did not come out on the Dreamcast. Again, if I am wrong about that, please let me know down in the comments, because I would love to get that version. I think it came out only on Windows. If that's the case, that seems like a natural thing for it. I wonder if it still works even today. I'll have to kind of check Steam and see if it's there or not. The other thing I want to talk about is that many people ask me, like, why is this footage so crisp? It was really surprising for a lot of people to see the Dreamcast looking like this. And yes, this is running on a real Dreamcast, although what I'm using is a version. I did a video probably a couple years ago now where I worked with a modder who installs, upgrades and things like that. So I did a video where he and I just went completely nuts doing this, like, fully tricked out Dreamcast with these colored LEDs and stuff like that. And then obviously the big update was an HDMI out. And so I kind of forget how that works. I think what it does, it's an internal mod, and I think what it does is that it taps into the VGA output of the Dreamcast and then just converts that over to HDMI. The Dreamcast is kind of a really weird console because there were many games that supported VGA, which is 640 by 480 resolution, but not all of them. And so I have this really awesome HDMI-enabled Dreamcast that outputs this type of video, and it looks absolutely glorious running here. I mean, I'm basically just using the Elgato game capture to do this. looks fantastic on your HD, your HD television. But there are a handful of games that just absolutely will not work with that adapter or that, output option, which is a real bummer. Now, I guess there are some tricks that you can do. Some people in the comments were kind of saying, oh, I guess you wait for a boot up screen and then you swap the discs or something like that. I haven't tried that, to be honest, but it is kind of one of the things that you need to know about when you collect for the Dreamcast is that all of them are going to work with the standard analog video outs of the time. But when you start getting into VGA and HDMI and all that, there are some that don't support it. Now, obviously, Typing of the Dead does. But you'll notice in that video of mine, I didn't show gameplay from certain games that you were like, hey, how come you didn't show footage from that? Well, it's because I could have captured it old school, but it would have looked really weird compared to how great this looks. So anyways, guys, this is my review and gameplay footage of me playing Typing of the Dead on the Sega Dreamcast. Although this video is kind of more of a history of me and typing, which is probably about as boring as it sounds. But, I'm old school, man. I was back in the day. That's... I got to be honest with you. I'm really glad I did not get that particular data entry job. Sometimes whenever people, when they tell you no, that's kind of the best thing that you need to hear, right? Sometimes if you get something too easily, that you don't actually grow. And so that was looking back, I was like, wow, okay, I'm really glad that they did that, because it sent me on another path that ultimately ended up much better for my life. But yeah, so interesting how life works that way. Anyways, so I'm gonna go ahead and let the rest of this play out. Enjoy. I don't make it much longer, sadly. I had more credits, but I basically just ended it for the video. I had enough, footage for my collection video, but yeah, check it out.